This is the second part for the Automoblox vehicle, the windshield. And in this one, it's very important that we follow the directions in the assignment because if we don't, we're going to run into trouble later. The first part will work really well, but if you skip this part and this part, if you skip step number two, then when you get down here and you try to do the fillets to curve everything on the windshield, it won't work very well. So we want to make sure that we follow the directions in the correct order. So first, I'm going to go over to Fusion and create my new part and save this as the windshield. And this part is going to start, as it shows in here, with the profile of the windshield. And it says to notice that there's three arcs that make up the windshield here. So the first arc that's pretty noticeable is this curve here and this curve at the top. But a lot of people make this the front of the windshield straight up and down, and that's also a curve with a radius of 6 inches. And so what we want to do is draw each of these lines. First, we'll draw this line, then we'll draw the curve on the right, the curve on the left, and then we'll fill in the curve in the top left side. So 3.04 is this first curve, so let's do that. We'll start a sketch, and again, we're in millimeters, which is the default. So we'll switch over to inches. Draw that first line, 3.04. Hit tab to lock that in and draw that line. And now I'm going to switch over to my 3-point arc. So with the 3-point arc, you click on the start, the end, and then somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up here and then put down a point in the middle. And now I'm going to dimension that. So D for dimension, and I want to dimension from the start to the end. Now if I move into the middle, I can do the distance between these two parts. But what I want to do is do the horizontal distance and the vertical distance. So if I drag down, it'll do a horizontal distance. If I drag over to the right, I can do the vertical distance. So I know that this is 1 because I remember seeing that number on the drawing. And then if I dimension between those same points again, horizontally, in the horizontal direction, it's 2.55 inches. And then the last thing we need to do is give it the radius. For the radius, if you click on the curve, we can tell it the radius. And we could put it here. I prefer to put it off the part on the top. So that's 6 inches. And now notice it's turned black, and there's the back side of my windshield. I'm going to do the same thing for the front side of the windshield. So 3-point arc, the first part, second part, somewhere in the middle, and then I'll give those dimensions as well. The first one that I know is from this end to this point horizontally is 3.01, and this point to this point vertically is 0.64. And then I'll click in the middle and put down the radius. The radius is 6 inches. And I'm not crazy about where it put that, so I'm going to click on it and drag it down here so there's no extension line. And it's a little bit easier to see. This would break some of our dimensioning guidelines when we do drawings, but for this sketch, that works pretty well. And the last thing we have to do is the arc in here for the windshield. So we'll click here, we'll click at the end, somewhere in the middle to tell it which direction the curve is. Notice it turned yellow, so it's a complete sketch, but this arc is still blue because we need to tell it that it's 0.4 for the radius. So dimension, click on the curve, 0.4, And now we can see that everything has turned black. It's locked in. We can stop the sketch and we can extrude that and uh, have something that looks correct, but it's not actually correct if we try to extrude it. If you notice, the next step is to delete two dimension constraints and then add two tangent constraints to control this correctly. So what'll happen if you don't do this, it won't be exactly smooth transition from one curve to the other. That's what tangent means. It means that they transition smoothly from one curve into the next. So we'll go back into Fusion and double click on the sketch to go back and edit it. Two dimensions that we need to delete are the 1.0 and the 2.55 dimensions. So delete both of those. This turns blue again because it's not fully constrained. And then under constraints is the tangent constraint. So we'll do tangent from this curve to the top and then from that curve to the back. And notice the two tangent symbols. So now if we stop the sketch, we actually are ready to do the extrusion. It says that extrusion goes back 2.55. And that's the first step for the windshield. So we'll save that and take a screenshot and we'll be ready for the next part.